Hello, hello. I am coming to you live from my car. Yes, I am. For those of you that don't know, we RV the States full time, and it is wonderful. It has been a wonderful experience. And it's also been a hesitation for doing Facebook Lives for the fact that we don't always have reliable internet. I really try on Tuesdays to make sure that I have a great connection, and sometimes it just doesn't quite go as much as I'd like it to. It isn't quite as high as I'd like. So in situations like that, I might just drive around and find another spot. Clearly you can see with the motorhome going behind me that I'm close to the campground. Basically, it took me just going outside of my campsite in order to have better internet, but I'm actually parked in a parking lot a little ways up because I want to make sure that I have the bandwidth to be able to share with you our topic today. Hey Missy, glad to have you on here. So like I did last week, I'm starting about 5 minutes early just so people know that we are live and we are ready to go, and we can make sure that we get this shared in the different groups. We've got the Mama Says Namaste page, which is where my Facebook Lives start, but as soon as I get this going, then we share it in the Unschooling Families group, as well as the the Mama Says Namaste group as well. Oh man, my mirrors. Yes, Missy, I have so many mirrors. This is all so that we can keep track of our wonderful trailer behind us. And they're all positioned in different ways, of course, and go way out so that we can see when we're hauling behind us as well. For Facebook Lives, I've been doing this every Tuesday, and I'm really enjoying it. It's been great to see the level of interaction that we're getting by doing these Facebook Lives, and I love the opportunity to be able to talk with you guys and to be able to answer questions in real time. In a perfect world, I would love to have an Ask Ashley or Ask Nathan and Ashley column, or on the podcast where we're just answering questions, because I love answering questions, especially when it comes to finding those greater connections with you and your family, and celebrating how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. So that is going to be the topic of today, which I'm very excited about. We are going to be talking about personality styles, which is the foundation of everything that I've done with Mama Says Namaste. So we have 2 more minutes till we start. So if you are on, Missy, you are in, well, actually, I guess both Missy and Sheila are in Tennessee. And so we've got 2 from Tennessee on. I am in, where am I? I'm going to butcher it. I pronounce it wrong every time. I'm in Yamasee. I think it's Yamasee, and I said Yamasee. I'm in somewhere, Yamasee, South Carolina, and we have had the joy of visiting with all of my family in Hilton Head Island and on Daufuskie Island this past weekend, and it has been so nice. Not the weather. The weather's not been great, unfortunately, but the time visiting with them was wonderful. Daufuskie Island is this itty bitty island that is off of the coast of Hilton Head, and you can only get to it by boat. And I can't remember what they said, maybe like 300 people that actually live on the island. So it's really a sweet place, and my cousin and his wife have established a wonderful little life there, and she does tourism on there and shows people all around the island, so takes them on tours to learn the history of Daufuskie, as well as the wild edibles on the property, and so an eco tour and all kinds of fun stuff. So we got to travel around and visit, and did it all in the warmth of a truck because it was cold and rainy. I was really hoping that I would bring the warmth from Florida with me as we travel north, and unfortunately it stayed in Florida and it's been cold and rainy. So As I'm sitting in my heated car, it is 10 a.m. Hey, Michael. I am ready to get rolling. So our focus for today is this biggie. It's understanding personality styles. Now, in the podcast, our season, season 5, the season that we're focused on right now is on functional education. So in the podcast, I've gone in depth, and then what I've done on these Facebook Lives is I've added in more conversation about the topics that Nathan and I are discussing on the podcast. I can't talk him into being on Facebook Live with me yet, but we'll see. We'll get him on here eventually, I'm sure. I'm going to tell him that people are liking and thumbs upping this because he should be on here with me. But we recorded the podcast for this week last night. Like I said, we've been visiting with family, so we were a little bit behind on doing the podcast. So we recorded it last night, and it was supposed to be on understanding the personality styles, owning your attitude, knowing who you are and who your child is, in order to have a more enriching educational environment. If you want to create lifelong learners, or if you want to be a lifelong learner, it's so important to recognize and understand where your strengths are and what motivates you and what shuts you down. And so we were going to cover all of the personality styles in the call. Well, we got carried away. We really love the topic, are very passionate about the topic and the importance of knowing this, especially in your own family, because of how much of a difference it makes just in the family dynamic and how people interact with one another and connect. And so I wanted to make sure that we could give it the time that it needed. And so we started, and we ended up getting halfway through. So we are going to carry over next week for the second part of it. So we've got a 2-part series on understanding the personality styles when it is in relation to dealing with your children. Now, all of season 1 is on personality styles. When I started out the podcast, that was my main focus. That was my foundation. And I went through the personality styles in depth, the history of the DISC personality assessments, which is what I use, why I feel like it's important, and then really going over, spending a whole episode on each of the personality styles. Now, Sheila's already posted in the chats or in the comments section about grabbing a personality cheat sheet. This is, if you go to mamasaysnamaste.com/personality, it'll actually redirect to the same thing as well. If you click on that, though, then you'll be able to get the cheat sheet and kind of see what it is I'm going through on this. And also, you will get a video series where I talk about celebrating your child's strengths. So I want to go ahead and dive in really quick. So we're going to give a quick explanation. DISC personality assessments. There are a ton of assessments out there. And I actually renamed mine. Instead of saying get your DISC assessment for your family, I call it a family snapshot. And the reason I did that, first off, because DISC assessment sounds so business-like and something like I'm coming in to label and critique a family. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I could have this as this DISC personality assessments, or any of the personality assessments that are out there, is a snapshot into the deeper than the surface. So you think about taking a family picture, and you want everybody to kind of shine in their best light, right? So you want to make sure that you get the right angle. Is it the profile angle, or get on my right side, or whatever? Or if you're with family, making sure that everybody's looking at the camera, everybody's smiling, baby doesn't have a booger in its nose, whatever you want. I said it's for a baby. I didn't mean that. Their nose. And you want to make sure that everybody is shining in their best light. So when I talk about a personality snapshot, what I'm talking about is that deeper than the surface. It's understanding and bringing awareness to what your strengths are, what really makes you shine. Because that's what we want to do. When I use the tagline, the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us, what I'm talking about there is how these beautiful strengths that I have are very different than the strengths that someone else has. I was on a call earlier today with my awesome mom assistant, Sheila, who of course is in here commenting commenting already. And we were talking about how she and my friend Jill, who's also on here, hey Jill, how they dive into understanding the analytics and the marketing side of the business that I just don't get. It overwhelms me. Jill will send me a text with details on, you know, how many sessions there were, and I'm going, I don't even know what sessions are, and it gets confusing. And I am so grateful for Jill and Sheila for understanding the details behind that and actually getting excited about how to read analytics and to understand it so that we can deliver the best content that we can, and we see what people are receptive to. I'm so grateful for their strengths in the details that are not my strengths. And so if I understand those, then instead of it being, you know, oh, that person's too nitpicky for me, you're recognizing that's a beautiful strength that I don't have. I don't get the details, and I am so thankful that there are people that do. So the reason I use DISC as opposed to any of the other ones, hey, Ashley, the reason that I use DISC as opposed to the other assessments that are out there are a lot of great ones. I'm actually in a program right now where I'm going through learning all of the details and how to utilize the Enneagram, because I know Enneagram is a big one right now. There's the Enneagram, you have Myers-Briggs, you have DISC, you have Strength Finders, the Kobe reports. There's a ton of different assessments. And then, of course, hop on Facebook and you have a gazillion. What's your color? What's your animal? What's your food type? Whatever. They all boil down to, and honestly, in my research and in the past 15 or so years of me working with personality profiles and teaching it, going through certification and learning all about behavior and personality styles, I found that I can relate almost every report back to DISC. And DISC is D-I-S-C. It's 4 things to memorize or to remember. And out of those 4, then I can narrow it down and do a quick explanation with animals that make it really easy for people to understand. And so it makes it easy to remember. And again, a profile, a personality assessment, it's computerized. It's only as good as what you're entering into it. So what I say in this is that it is not so critical that a personality profile is 100% accurate, although it's eerie how accurate it can be based on 24 questions. But the key is that it just opens the door to awareness, because you get back a report with all kinds of information, and you can say, does this resonate with you or does it not? And if it doesn't, why does it not resonate? What does that say about you and where you are in your life? It's funny, I can look at the graphs at this point. Since I know DISC so well and I understand how to read the graphs, when I'm doing my portrait sessions, where that's a coaching package that I kind of have as a basic foundational package, where when somebody purchases a Namaste snapshot, then I can take that snapshot and I can work just with them or with them and their partner or with their whole family, just on understanding and reading those graphs to see how their personality style is working in the life that they have created for themselves. And I joke about it being my tarot card for being able to talk with them, because if I look at that graph, I can see so much about who they are and where they're at. And if they're living in their strengths, or if they are, a common one is trying to be all things to all people, or they're going through a transition in their life and they're seeing and they're feeling strained and stressed, and I can look at this graph and say, oh, well, you know, you feel like you should be doing this, and so you're really pushing yourself in this arena where your strength is actually here. And if you focus in on your strength, you may see a huge shift in what's going on in your family. So it's wonderful. I'm very passionate about the profiles, and I truly feel like taking the time to do a quick assessment, it does not label your family. It does not excuse any behavior that you see that is negative or tearing your family apart, but it opens the door. It opens the door to awareness. It gives you an insight into the why and what is deeper, beyond the reaction, beyond the whatever personality style that is so in your face that might be dominating the family, and it helps you to understand what's going on and where that's coming from. So let's go through really quick. I'm going to try to knock these out and give you just a little Cliff's Notes version, just a little taste of the different personality styles. Now, as we're going through, like I said, Sheila has already posted in here a link to a free opt-in so you can get, or a free download so you can get a personality cheat sheet. So you can see that and kind of read along with me. It actually has a great overview with what the strengths are, what your trigger is, how to be authentically, like how to recognize somebody who is this personality style, as well as some communication tips for how to pause and allow another person to respond. And so as we go through these, you've got all of those. And then I also have the next step up is an ebook I have that's called Family Snapshots. And the Family Snapshots is discovering how to see your children in their best light. And that one is going to go through a little bit more of what I'm going to be talking about in here. And it also has a very quick assessment that you can do if you have a very small child. Now, if you have a child that's over probably 4 or 5, anything older than that, I have assessments that you can take with your child. So you can do, you can take an actual assessment so that it's very personalized to your specific child or to you. So it will say, Ashley is like this. When Ashley's in this environment, she does this. And so you can get a little bit more of a personalized touch by actually taking one of the snapshots that I have. So let's go on and start diving in. Hey, Christy. So, and if you guys have an idea, as I'm describing this, if it sounds like you or your child or your partner or something like that, post it in the comments. I want to see. And if you have any questions, post them in there so that I can respond as we go through. So the first one that I want to address is a high D child or a high D person. So if you want to look at animals, this would be like a lion or an eagle. Think leader. This would be the stereotypical boss man. You know, this very that's a very stereotyped way of saying it. They're very take charge. Characteristics of them would be that they're very active, they're confident, courageous, decisive, very fast paced. They may be very intense, they're strong-willed, they're talkative, and they are highly opinionated. And of course, many of you know this is my personality style. This is my main personality style, and I always joke about, you know, I don't want to just offer unsolicited opinions to everyone, but if people are commenting on something, I can say, you know, I have an opinion on it. Like, I'm happy to share. It's my opinion, and I have no problem saying it. But I'm recognizing that this is something that I have. I'm very opinionated. Yes, it doesn't mean that I have to press it on everybody, and it doesn't mean that that's the end-all, be-all. And so me recognizing that this is a strength and that can also be a weakness is really powerful so that I can do that. Ashley, this is my husband, hands down. Yes, you will recognize some in these. So let's talk about this. Those are the characteristics of it. So if you're looking at and I'm going to focus in a little bit on children, but of course you're going to recognize this in adults as well. So if you are in a school type setting, or I can say in a work setting, this is going to be somebody who challenges or make it safe, they make it fair. There are these different ones. And so, I mean, instantly, rules are meant to be challenged. Yes, that's a high D right there. They can be very competitive, which ironically, I'm not competitive when it comes to sports or things like that. I'm not that competitive, but I'm competitive with myself. And that can be a way of doing it as well, where it's this constant push to be better than you were before. So on top of that, then you have, I'm breaking up a bit. Hopefully I will, okay, I'm back on. Man, that's what I was afraid of. My internet may not be the greatest, so hopefully I can make this work, and I'm going to shut off internet on my phone so it can be a little bit better there. All right. So going back on, they can be determined, goal-oriented, a hard worker, high energy, fiercely independent, born leader, natural delegator, organizer, not easily discouraged, practical, productive, solution-oriented. All of those would be a high D personality. So let me talk about what their trigger is. And when I say trigger, this is what can shift those strengths of being that leader and that visionary, and being very results oriented and getting things done. Any strength, when you trigger a fear, can become a negative reaction. And some people say that this is a weakness. I like to say it's a negative reaction because it's a part of who we are. But when we react without thinking, it can come across in a very, very wrong way. So in this situation, or for a high D, they need to feel in control. So if they feel like they don't have a choice, they feel underappreciated, or that they just don't have control of a situation, what can happen is all of a sudden, instead of being a great leader, they're a micromanager or a drill sergeant, or they're barking orders, or they're not sensitive to other people's feelings. And so if you think of that, and then all of a sudden you've got somebody barking at you, it may have nothing to do with their love for you. And it may have everything to do with the fact that they're feeling frazzled and they have a to-do list a mile long. For me, a great solution for that is just doing a brain dump and writing it all down in a checklist and or a to-do list. Because for me, that helps me to feel like I'm not going to forget something. Then I can do that, and then I can set that aside, and I can focus on my family without just rattling off all the things that they need to do. So a way to motivate them is to give them a challenge, make them feel in control, give them a goal with a reward. So when I'm dealing with Juliet and I'm trying to get her motivated to do something, I will say stuff like, I bet you can't run that fast. And she, that's immediate. Her eyes light up. Oh, yes, I can. And she's going to show me and prove me wrong on that. And she loves a challenge. If I have another one of these personality styles and I say that same thing, that could easily shut them down completely. And they'd say, yeah, you're right. And you don't want that. So understanding what motivates them, knowing that I need to challenge and push, and that is something that is going to light up a high D, is huge. So you want to make sure that you're bringing out their strengths. You want to be very brief and to the point. High Ds love bullet points. Get to the bottom line quickly. They don't need a long story. What's the end result? Don't get into a power struggle. Encourage them to talk about their feelings and how others might feel. This is really important because a high D is very task focused. So they can get so focused on the task that they forget the people in the room. So helping them to be aware of their impact and how they can affect others is really powerful. Teach them how to apologize and the importance of doing so. Not, I'm sorry you're upset. No, I'm sorry that I didn't address this in a way that showed you how much I love you. I mean, think about the difference of that. I'm sorry you're upset. Whenever you're pointing a finger at someone else, there are 3 more pointing back at you. We use that all the time in our house. And own an apology. That's a hard thing for a high D. A high D can very easily twist everything back to somebody else's fault. Help them to learn the benefits of being on a team. Remind them that being kind can be more important than being right. Help them to verbalize when they are frustrated in a way that doesn't just shut people down, and help them with being flexible. Sometimes they can have very high expectations. Again, it's all about the end result. So sometimes as a visionary, they see the end result so beautifully, they can get really frustrated if it doesn't go as planned. So then you want to look at ways to encourage them. And how can you encourage a high D child? Well, we want to focus on the strengths, not shut them down. So yeah, they may be competitive and defiant and challenge authority, and you're going, oh my gosh, just say okay. Just say yes, ma'am, and do it. Be compliant for once in your life. And I remember getting really frustrated about that with my kids. And I remember crying to Nathan about how my kids were so unruly and challenged everything. And he said, you're not raising kids to just follow the leader. You are raising future leaders. And when I saw it in that way, that, it gets old to explain everything. And there are times where every parent wants to say, because I said so, in a discussion. But that desire to question and to challenge authority, it doesn't have to be done in a disrespectful way. And that's where I'm focusing on. I want to show them respect and love, but I never want to squelch their desire to ask and their curiosity to know. because the more they know and understand, the more they are able to think critically, to forge those new paths, and to be those leaders and explorers and adventurers out there that may find a new and better way to do something or to connect with others. So that is a big part of High D. And like I said, there's a lot more information in even in the disc cheat sheet that Sheila has on here. So so go and check that out. I could talk, well, obviously I could talk a ton about the personality styles, which is why we're now doing two sessions for the podcast just to cover these, and I had a whole first season on it. So let's dive into a high I. A high I personality, this is going to be like a peacock or an otter, very playful and outgoing and friendly and gregarious. And yes, if you don't know what gregarious is, that's a good vocab word for you, because I had to look it up when I first started doing this as well. Cheerful, they're creative, they're very touchy-feely. They may be, we call Ellie our friend finder, because she's out finding friends everywhere. If you're sitting in a restaurant and you hear that one really loud laugh person, with that laugh that just takes over the whole room, pretty much guarantee it's a high I. You can also see them by maybe the vibrant colors they dye their hair. They may wear very colorful clothing. They may even be covered in tattoos. And all of these may be a form of expressing their personality, because they live out loud and they can be very much the life of the party and be very high energy. Now, like a D, they can also be very fast-paced. And as you've noticed, I have been talking really fast because, of course, I'm trying to cram all of this in. But a D and an I, which happens to be my top two personality styles, so those are my main strengths, is in the D and the I category. We go very fast. Our processing is 3 seconds. Like 3 seconds it takes us to move from one thing to another. And when we get to the S and the C, it's 7 seconds, not because they are less intelligent, but because they process and systematize a little bit more before they respond. And if you think about that, it may be that a D and an I may respond faster, but we may be a little bit more ready, fire, aim, and haven't actually laid it all out and processed through. So a high I, a good pointer that I always say for a high I who tends to just barrel through stuff, is to, when you ask a question, count to 7 in your head. Do 7 seconds. And when I do this, when I'm leading calls with, when I do group coaching and mastermind calls, I will ask a question and I'll sit there silently in my head. It seems like forever, and I'll count to 7. And inevitably, every time an S or a C speaks up right at 7 seconds. Giving that little bit of time can really help people to understand and to process. So for a high I, and I'll go back to that a little bit when I'm back on the S's and C's. In a school or work setting, they're going to be very warm and approachable. They're going to be the compulsive talker. Oftentimes, these are the class clowns. They may be daydreamers and unfocused and multitasking so much that maybe they don't always follow through. They can be great at a team player. They love being with a team. They're very, very people-focused and people-oriented. They're going to be motivated by relationships and interactions, not the task or achievement like a high D. They also can be easily distracted. So what upsets them and what their fear is, what triggers a reactive behavior, is if they feel rejected. If they feel that they are stifled or alone and that people are pushing them away, what happens is sometimes you have somebody who is, you know, super chatty and the life of the party, and now they see you backing off. And so what do? They start getting closer, and they're getting closer to you and talking louder and doing everything they can to keep your attention, because they're sensing you pulling away, and their subconscious is like, no, love me, like what I'm saying is good, please pay attention. And so they're wanting more, and in doing that, they're becoming more obnoxious with what was their strength, and now it's this negative reaction that people want to move away from. And we talk about that like with Ellie. I never want to squash Ellie's energy, and I never want to tell her she can't be who she is. And I also want her to recognize her impact and how she can use that as a positive by being Ellie the friend finder, and as a negative, being the Ellie button pusher who doesn't let up, who doesn't recognize when somebody needs a break. And so talking to her about the fact that we love how she talks and she interacts with everybody in the family. And there are times that Clara, who is an SC and she doesn't, or CS, and she she needs to have a break to process things. And when Ellie doesn't give her that break, she starts to shut down. And so when Clara says, will you please just stop talking? It's not that Ellie's a horrible person. It's, okay, let's recognize Clara needs a break. We know that you can keep on going, but if you really want her to pay attention to you, now is the time to step back and breathe and give her an opportunity to catch up. And so understanding that has really helped with being able to pull out her strengths and recognize and give her awareness to her impact on others, and to be able to use this in a positive way. They love to feel like they're a part of something, and entertaining and attention. So if you want to motivate a high I child, this is where you want to give them the light. Like if you want to help them address a new topic, maybe this is when you say, let's do a video about it that we can share. Ellie has byebyeiloveyou.com. We have not posted a video in ages, and she has been hounding me to get a new video up there because she loves that idea of, first off, just doing a video to share her insights, but second off, to be able to express herself and know that there are people that are going to be watching that, and she loves that interaction. So I can motivate her to do a lot by giving her the opportunity to have the attention that she so loves. So look for ways to do that. When you're helping to bring out their strengths, you want to encourage that awareness of their surroundings. You want to help them learn to work independently, so they don't see being alone as rejection, but being alone as an opportunity to focus, because they need to be reminded to pay attention to the details and to plan things out and to work on their listening skills and to structure things so that they can follow through. Let them entertain then, and never hold back on that laughter and fun and love. You can encourage them by talking about how you love their creativity and you love their enthusiasm, and spreading that support and that encouragement. Affirmation is a really big thing for a high I. All right, let's move on to an S personality style here. So S personality, if you were to compare it to animals, this would be like a golden retriever or a dove. You think about that, and I say golden retriever specifically because, like, best loyal family dog, you know, it just reminds you, you know, my Catahoula Pit Bull mix doesn't quite have the same perception as a golden retriever. So they're very loyal, they're kind, they're calm and steady. Like a dove, they're peacemakers. They're very low energy, and they're more observant. They're non-confrontational. They are patient. These people, they take longer to process. This is where it's that 7 seconds. My mom is a high S, and I can be talking and I'm going through all the list of things that we need to do for an event. You know, she's super social. She's an SI. She loves doing events, and I'm rattling stuff off as a DI. I'm getting things done. I'm going like this, and I'll be talking, and all of a sudden 10 minutes into it, she goes, no, wait. So you said the event is when? And I'm like, that was 10 minutes ago. Well, I've moved so fast, I never gave her time to process and to really focus in on what it was that we were saying, because as I'm talking, she's putting them in logical order. She's thinking about, what does this mean? Where am I going to go from here? And I need to allow for that time for her to think through what it is that I'm saying. So in a work, in a school setting, they follow through with tasks. They're sensitive. They may be quiet, but I have to say an S sense of humor can be super witty and funny. They may not say a lot about it, and then once they say something, everybody cracks up. Because when an S talks, people tend to stop and listen, because it's not constant chatter, like what you may get from an I or sometimes a D or even a C. An S tends to not talk as much, but when they do, it has a lot of meat to it. Or their interaction is more on a smaller scale. You don't see a high S coming alive and being super animated on a stage with 4,000 people. That's not a typical high S role. That would be an I or a D. But an S is going to want more of that one-on-one interaction. So in a school or work setting, they're going to follow through with their tasks. They respect authority. They love to serve and support others. And this is something, again, where it's okay to not be the leader. We need a lot of S's in this world. And there are combinations of personality style where you may have S in your personality and you are a powerful leader. And I have seen people like this who say, I knew of one guy that was a manager in a corporation, and he was a high S, and he said, don't confuse kindness for weakness. An S can be very strong and powerful, and they are, even in a leadership position, they're supportive. These are your leaders that really support and empower their team and let them step up, because they don't have that need for control like what a D has. So for them, they resist change, and they resent being pushed around. So what happens is they can shut down and become passive aggressive. So now you've got somebody who's super loyal and supportive and gets things done and follows through. And then if you trigger their fear, which is loss of security, if they're feeling insecure about who they are, where they are, what they're doing, what others are thinking about where they stand, if they're feeling insecure or they're feeling overwhelmed, which can then go back to that insecurity again, I don't know that I can do it all, I don't think I'm up to the task, then or everything is moving so fast they aren't sure if they're keeping up, or they don't know if they can hold on, what can happen is then they shut down. And we see this like a teen with a messy room, and we have a kid who's just moved over into teenagerdom, and they are just entering high school. They've got hormonal changes, they have peer changes, they are trying to figure out who they are as they're kind of a kid and kind of an adult, and there's a lot of insecurity everywhere, and all of a sudden they're a lazy slob, and we get they get thrown that label that they're lazy because they don't want to push to do something. And so what you may see as lack of drive or laziness or having an attitude and being passive aggressive may have more to do with them not feeling secure in anything than it does them actually turning into a kid that just likes a sloppy room. And recognizing that and sitting down, and instead of saying, you better clean your room by tonight or else, if you sit down and you say, what's going on? Where are you feeling, how can I help you to feel secure, feel supported? And kind of looking at that, it may be that just reframing something as simple as a clean room may be something where instead of it being this burden of having to clean up a room, it's an opportunity for them to create their safe zone exactly like they want, so that becomes their security instead of the battlefield when you get home. So look for what motivates them is that deep connection with others and feeling needed. So letting them know you need their help, that they are such an important part of the family. You need their input. You need them to be a part of it. And S and an I are so motivated by those people relationships that's so, so important for them to have added in. And okay, I love Ashley and Kayla are both saying that they are S's. Yes, my husband is an S. S's are amazing. And ironically, S's are also, now statistics, I'm going to get attacked for this by C's, which we're going into next, but statistic-wise, S's are the highest majority of the population. So approximately 69% of the population is a high S personality. Smallest percentage is the high D. And I would say probably because if there were too many high Ds, then we wouldn't last very long because everybody would be at each other's throats. So an S, and you see this so much in the rise in activism and people stepping up for a greater cause and social entrepreneurship, helping others and seeking to connect. That is so much an S personality trait. So yes, we have lots of S's in here. So let's go, okay, to bring out the strengths for an S, help them with expressing their feelings because S's tend to carry it internally. And I have to stress that especially in a marriage, an S can be a very great role, and it can be a role that can lead to an explosion. And that's because an S is supportive and they kind of deal with it, process it, handle it on their own. It's okay, not a big deal, not a big deal, not a big deal, because they don't want to confront, because confrontation is not enjoyable for an S. And so you don't confront, you just support, you make do until all of a sudden, cannot take it anymore, explode. And that may be where they decide, my husband went through a phase in his life where he would do that and he would take it until all of a sudden one day, you're dead to me, no more, cannot handle it anymore. And he would shut down a relationship because of that, because he didn't explain the issues on the front end. And so it would just get to the point where he couldn't take it anymore. And what happens though is when you don't share the little things, then they become really big. And so for you as a high S, if you don't want to confront, the worst thing in the world is to not share the little things, because all of a sudden you've got a big mountain to deal with, and it causes major conflict in a relationship. And so sharing those little things and being open to communicate those can make such a big difference. So going on with some other things, practice positive self-talk. Teach them how to stand up for themselves. Remember that kindness does not equal weakness. They can be kind and supportive and work well with others and still be able to have a voice. And you want to make sure you really push that even as they're a young child. And do that in two ways. One, by encouraging them, saying, I appreciate your help. I love your compassionate heart. I love to hear what you have to say. Thank you for being patient with me. And another huge way to help encourage this in your child is to be the example. If you are an S, make sure you stand up and have a voice, because your opinion, your perspective matters in your family, and it is important that your whole family recognizes that you don't stay quiet until you blow up, but you share your thoughts, your opinions, and your desires from the very beginning. That open communication makes a world of of difference in a relationship. Another thing is that you need to give them space. If you are dealing with a conflict or confrontation, it's okay to just step away. A high I is not going to want to step away. A high I is going to want to be in your face until everything is solved and everyone's happy again. A high D is going to want to make sure that you understand what they want and what they are thinking and what their perspective is. But an S needs to have some space to process, and that's okay. Just don't let them shut down. There is a difference between space and shutting it off. So saying, I see that you are really worked up right now. Let's take a breather. Let's have some chill out time, and then we'll come back to this and we'll discuss it again. That is perfectly fine and sometimes very necessary. When an S feels like they're pressured to have the answers and find the resolution right away, it can be really overwhelming. So give them an opportunity to process a little bit before everything has to be resolved. Again, just understanding these can make such a difference with having grace for one another. Okay, let's go into C, and then I want to make sure if you have any questions. Boy, my nose is itching like crazy today. If you have any questions, please make sure to post them, because I'd love to get that in there. What's your biggest challenge? What's your biggest struggle with your children or with your partner where you feel like you're butting heads? Tell me what your biggest struggle is, and maybe I can sit there and maybe we can look at why their personality style, what that may do to have an effect on it. So going with a C. A C is for animals, it would be a beaver or an owl. When you think about that, a beaver is very detailed with these intricate dams that are, so elaborate that they can block a whole creek. And for an owl is kind of what we use as the symbol of wisdom, because they gather all of the facts. An owl may be very quiet and not make a sound, and then with laser-like beams, they can come in and swoop down and find this minuscule little mouse on the ground, because they can narrow in and see exactly what it is that they need to see or hear. And so for characteristics, they're very detailed, they're analytical, logical, systematic, introspective. They like a lot of personal space. Don't encroach in them. You think about a C with a high I who loves to jump in everybody's bubble, and they love bubbles. They're going to pop into anyone's and say howdy. And a C does not like that. They want their personal space. They can be very introverted and reserved, very realistic and serious and purposeful. So they go through things in a very systematic way. They are very precise and accurate. And they can be drained by people. I mean, I noticed this with Clara even when she was an infant, when I was bringing her home from the hospital, and she would have sensory overload, and she could not, it would be too much. She would be sensitive to the smell in a room or the noise in a room or whatever, and I would have to kind of pull her back and give her an opportunity to have some downtime. When she was in preschool, we would have a day of her being in, she actually was in a Montessori co-op when she was 5, and I would go to pick her up, and here I have her 3.5-year-old sister in the car who's bouncing off the walls and so excited to see her sister and wants to talk. And I wouldn't get down the road 2 minutes before there'd be a complete meltdown in the back, because Clara had spent all day long with people, and now she's in the car with this incessant chatter next to her, and she couldn't handle it. So I'd drive over to the Costco parking lot where there was a little grassy area in the median, and I'd give her a 5-minute timeout. And I say timeout not in a negative way. I gave her a 5-minute break. I'd say, all right, honey, you got 5 minutes. And she would sit there in the grass in silence, just to defrag, just to shut off all of the noise of the day, all of the stimulation that she had, so that she could then sit in the car. And then she'd get in the car, and she and Ellie would talk, and they would be fine. But she needed to have that break to kind of just regain herself, regain her composure, and get the energy to be able to have that interaction with her super excited sister. So so recognizing that is huge. They also can be perfectionistic. Okay, they ask a lot of questions. They're looking for lots of answers. They follow the rules. They have very high standards. They like things to be in routine. They like to see charts and facts, and they like to see the process. Clara is constantly asking me, what are we doing next? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And a big thing for her was us teaching her flexibility. That was one of her first big words that she ever learned, was to be flexible. It was her first sign that she learned, flexible, because we wanted to make sure that she understood that life is not perfect, because the fear and what triggers that reactive behavior for a C is they hate to be criticized. They don't want to make a mistake. They want to get things right. They've researched. They know the way things are supposed to go. This is the logical way. But you all know life doesn't make perfect sense. There's not always logic for it. There's not a justifiable process for every single thing that happens. Good and bad. People act differently than what we think they should. And they work, everybody has their own perspective and their own expectations. And it can be really difficult. And so what happens is you have this child or this family member, whoever, that loves the details and the logic, and then when taken to an extreme, they're afraid to be criticized. They're afraid they're going to get it wrong. So they spend so much time perfecting it that they have paralysis by analysis, or they miss deadlines and everything else because they're working so hard to get everything right. I mean, I remember Clara being so upset, just in tears, because she couldn't get her shoelaces tied where they were perfectly even. And we had to sit and we had to talk through it. And I just started kind of doing the Socratic method with her, where I was asking her questions, So your shoelaces aren't tied correct, so it's bothering you, right? Yes. So if they're not right, can you walk that way? Well, yeah. Okay. Does it affect how you talk or how you eat? No. Okay. So I kept asking questions about really kind of showing her, in the scope of life, does it really matter if one loop is a little bit bigger than the other? I didn't say that because I'm not going to sit there and criticize what she's doing. I'm not going to tell her what her feelings are is unimportant, but I'm going to help her put it in perspective. And in the scope of life, is one loop bigger than the other going to break you? Is this the end of the world? No. Okay, by the end of it, she was laughing, and she retied it, and she was fine. She walked away from it. And we had to teach her those little things on being flexible. Another thing that we did with her wanting to know everything, exactly what we're doing, and then holding us to it, and then all of a sudden we've got a meltdown on our hands because plans changed. It rained. Sorry, we can't go to the park. I know we said we were going to go to the park, but it's pouring down rain. We're not going to take you out in a monsoon. So we looked at some other ways to introduce flexibility, and one of those things is we would have adventure days where we would go and do stuff and nobody knows what we're doing. We're going to be completely flexible today. We have no plans. We are just going to be flexible and see what happens. We don't share with you what they are. And part of why we don't share is because we feel like we're stuck, and sometimes a better opportunity arises. Sometimes we have to change plans. We can't control everybody else. And so what do we have control of? Well, you have control of your reaction. You have control of how you are going to handle this situation. And so you may focus on that, but let's keep some things open and up in the air, because sometimes that adventure and that mystery is really fun. So we have that. So making mistakes and being criticized can really upset them. If you want to motivate a high C, praise their hard work and their focus. Ask them for your help in analyzing the details. Having a little kid come in and fact check you, or see that you've done something right, or look at your cleaning skills and did you clean up well, or anything like that. And they love that opportunity to be a part of it and use their strengths on being able to see the detail. You want to praise their work. Promote a balance between work and play. You don't want to let them get so serious that they don't understand the importance of play and laughter. So you want them to lighten up a bit. So show them that their mistakes aren't a failure. Give them the opportunities to learn flexibility and enjoying life in the present moment, focusing on the good, because as a high C, they can be very practical and a realist. And you get a high C and a high I together, and a high I is going to say, oh, tomorrow we're going to we can go hiking and we're going to go have so much fun and da-da-da-da. And a high C can go, well, it's going to rain tomorrow. And it's like, double popped. Okay, party pooper, you're a Debbie Downer. And no, they're being realist. They've researched. They've done the research, and they recognize it's going to be a rainy day tomorrow. And so understanding that and knowing, okay, well, they've covered their bases a bit, it can be a positive versus them just, raining on your parade. Teach them to accept compliments when somebody says something. Sometimes, because criticism is such a fear for them, they can be their own worst critic. And so they can criticize themselves and be down on themselves a lot, so that they're the first ones to do it before anybody else can. Allow for that fun. And a great way of doing that is by being the example. Make a mistake. Recognize you made a mistake. Give yourself grace and love. Laugh at yourself, because all of those things are things that your children, your high C kids, need to know. They need to learn how to do it, and the best way to do it is to see the example, see somebody that they love doing it well, and being able to navigate the ups and downs, and the fact that we don't have control over everything, and our life is not perfect. Our life is messy, but it's fun, and we're in it together. Give them space, and when you do want to talk with them, make sure that it's a good time to talk. They can be really focused on the task, so focused that it's a major intrusion and interruption for you to jump in with something like you haven't paid attention to the fact that they were focused on something else. So that is a bunch of info in a nutshell. And I'm looking here on the questions here. I want to see if there's anything else that I can add. Let's see, Missy, you asked if you have anything where you address combinations of styles. This is where, this is really where the snapshots comes in, because the snapshots, the ebook that I have, which I add the ebook for free as a bonus when you purchase any of my snapshots. So you're going to get the ebook regardless. So you can do just $10 for the ebook, or you can have it as a free bonus for these snapshots. And with that, it really gives you the specifics, because what it does is it gives you those graphs that I was talking about earlier. So it shows where, like, we all have a little bit of every personality style. If I were to lay out every descriptor for every single thing, you would probably be able to find at least one trait of every personality style, because we are a blend of all of these beautiful things. That's part of what makes us human. We all have elements of these, but we tend to gravitate toward anywhere from 1 to 3 as our strengths. And when you see how those interact with one another, and then you're able to pull what the strengths are versus the negative reactions, then you can really find how it really is uniquely you. There is always a blend. It's very rare to find somebody who is only high D, only high S. They tend to have a variation, and that can really help you to understand, because a DC, everything about them is very task focused. If you're going to show love to a DC, you're going to say, I love how you completed that project. That painting is gorgeous. Things like that. Whereas for a high S and an I, if you have somebody that's an SI and they're all people, everything is going to be related on people. You're going to show them love by explaining you know, how they made you feel. Oh, Ellie, that picture you drew, you remembered that I love unicorns and you drew it with my favorite colors, and that means so much. You really were thinking of me when you did it. So I could praise the same thing, but I'm saying it in a different way based on their personality styles, and knowing that they are very much on the people side, or very much on the task side, or very outgoing or introverted. So it could really play into all of that. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, Ashley, you say I'm a C and S. Is that possible? Very possible. CS is a very common combination. DI and CS, those ones tend to be good combinations. You don't typically see like a D and an S, or an I and a C. Those tend to be the exact opposites from one another. And you don't usually see that unless there's one combining the two. If you think about the quadrants of the brain, it's like a D and an I are up here, and S and a C are up here. And you don't go diagonal. You have to have them all related. And again, I go into these more when I'm doing the coaching sessions, and also in the book. But my oldest exhibits a lot of what you're saying. Let's see, you're saying you're a CS, your husband is a D, your youngest might be a D or an I, and your oldest exhibits elements of C, saying for a C, but he exhibits moments of an I. And I will say for that, sometimes you will have a high C who tends to be introverted and not, you know, not people motivated and everything, and then you ask them a question and they will talk your ear off. And it's not because they're a high I, it's because they are so passionate, and the breadth of their knowledge on a topic may be so in depth that they can go very long, and they can be very drawn out and have a lot of the super talkative elements while not having any of that high I. It's just because you've hit a point that they're really excited about and they're really fascinated about. And yeah, so I mean, when you have a blend of a ton of different personality styles in your family, it can get very exhausting. And I think a huge aspect of that is whether you are, it can go to the extreme of becoming a victim of circumstance. And what I mean by that is, especially in a growing family, you have these little tiny dictators in your home. Everybody has a different demand constantly. And as a child, they aren't always aware of, and sometimes I say as a child, adults as well, they aren't always aware of the impact that they have, and the fact that it's not just them in the world. They can be very egocentric, that the world revolves around them. You have a whole bunch of those, and you're reacting and you're responding. I mean, as a C and an S, you're supporting, you're wanting to reach out to them. So you have a high DI who needs you constantly, right now. Okay, this is important right now. And so is this, and so is this. And you've got 15 things, and you're going, I can't do it. I'll voice stuff, and my husband immediately will stress out, because he, in his desire as an S, as a supportive S, if I say it, he automatically is going to do it. And I'm like, I'm just wanting to brainstorm here. Like, don't get up and make me coffee. I just said coffee sounded good, but like, it's okay. Like, we can sit here and hang out. And he's immediately wanting to support and to serve. And I've had to watch myself, because if we don't pay attention to that, what can happen is he's starting out by supporting and serving. And I say something like, oh man, I'd love a drink. And so he goes up and he gets me a drink. And so I start getting into the habit of doing that. And so I just demand. And so I start saying things, and he's going to follow through. And at some point, he's going to get tired of that. He's going to get tired of being taken advantage of, and he's going to snap. And that's when you end up with a lot of frustration and difficulty. So respecting each other's strengths and not abusing it, not taking it for granted, and giving them support and affirmation is huge. And another thing is just taking, like you said, Ashley, you know, taking time for yourself that's necessary. It's hard to do that. And especially, I know, Ashley, you're traveling, and I know it's hard to be able to take some alone time when you're living in an itty bitty little RV like what we are. And so it can be hard when you're traveling to get that time to be alone and to defrag. But there is something huge about being intentional and setting the intention for the day. And sometimes that may mean that you wake up earlier to have some silence, to have some time that is just you before anybody else in your family gets up, so that you can, you know, maybe you can go for a walk and just in silence, but allowing for breaks throughout the day. It may mean that You go to the bathroom for a little bit longer and sit in there for a minute. Just sit in the bathroom with the door shut. You can hear everything. You know what's going on. And just allow yourself a mommy time out. It's okay to do those, and those times away, you cannot, using the Christian analogy of filling a cup. I use this a lot of times when I'm working with people who are in ministry situations where they're penniless. They have no money. They're doing ministry. And I was talking with a guy yesterday, and I was saying, you know, my dad, he was a pastor, and I was talking to him about my father, who is. We have coaches that are pastors, and they want to be a coach, and they cannot do it. It's not sustainable because they think in ministry you don't actually charge anything. Well, we believe very strongly. I mean, my dad says his ministry is his business, because you cannot give from an empty cup. You have to figure out how to sustain where you are, and whether that's in business. And you have to be a good steward and say, you know, hey, I'd love to give the snapshots away for everybody for free. I would love to do that. I want every family to take the Namaste snapshots. But I recognize if I do that, I'm going to run out of money. I'm not going to be able to provide them anymore because I pay for those things. And I have to be able to I have to create this as part of my business to sustain it so that I can share it and spread it with more people. Or if it has to do with my family, man, I haven't slept for 5 years because I have babies in the home and I'm nursing constantly. And all of a sudden I talk to these moms and they're shells of themselves because they're so exhausted, so overworked. They've served their family so much, almost too well, that they don't have enough to give. And I challenge those moms and I say, are you really, and I could say dads as well, are you really being the best parent that you can be by giving everything so that you're a shell of yourself? Because when you're exhausted, that limits a lot. I mean, my gosh, you can even go to the safety of your family. If you're driving around and you've been sleep deprived because you have a baby that doesn't sleep, and you're constantly at their beck and call, I understand people can be big on co-sleeping and nursing forever and all of that. And if it works for your family, more power to you. But don't beat yourself up. If you are a shell and you are dealing with such exhaustion that you're a danger on the road, maybe it's time to reevaluate how much you're giving and how much you need to step out and fill your own bucket so that you really are present for your family and not just standing there in exhaustion or anger or frustration. So setting an intention, time blocking, and allowing for some time for yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes, can make a world of difference in your family. So, okay, I know I have gone a while. I am already over an hour. So I am going to, so we also have some talk about RVing, because I know a lot of people in here are RVing, and 90-day family road trip. I've got a whole section just on the expectations and setting those expectations and understanding your personality style and how important that is before you hit the road. Because here you're talking about a big shift in a lot of people's lives as well. So I have all of that. How about a house full of C's? That's a hoot. A house full of C's can sit there and nitpick each other to death. And they need some silent time. They need some opportunities to let go. But I would encourage a house full of C's to do something completely out of the norm and do something that is super fun and challenge themselves, like once a week to play a funny game or to do something like that to kind of step out of it, because a house full of C's needs to see that there are more opportunities beyond just a C environment as well. And recognizing your strengths in that, and also recognizing the fact that the house is not going to be perfect, and allowing grace can be super important. So let's see, last question here, and then I'm going to let you guys go since I'm over an hour. It says Nikki says, we have a variety of personalities, and all 3 of my children need to be handled separately, but they all think everything should be equal. How do you deal with that? Man, especially if you're doing some variation of homeschooling, so you have kids at home all the time. And if they go into a school environment, into a traditional school environment, they learn quickly that they can't always have the floor. They can't. I mean, if you've got a classroom of 25, 30 kids, you cannot give one kid attention the whole time. They learn to sit down, be quiet, raise their hand, wait their turn. You don't always get that before school, and you don't always get that when you're in a non-traditional setting. And sometimes we can do our kids a disservice with that, where we want to be present for them, and in doing so, we're constantly there and we're constantly supporting and listening to every single moment. But what happens is, I mean, we naturally, as small children, believe that the world revolves around us. And at some point, we're going to get smacked in the face that that's not true. And I would much rather that happen at home, in a safe environment where they are loved and supported, than to always be at their beck and call. They get out into the real world environment and somebody else shuts them down in a very negative, horrible way. So with that, and with them being needing to be handled separately, I would, it's again being proactive. It's setting the intention and planning ahead a little bit. Come up with some things that will keep their attention, that may be something where they can learn to entertain themselves a little bit more. So, you know, you've got only for this certain time of day, you're going to be sitting down one-on-one with each kid. And so you may have Play-Doh or something interactive that keeps their attention that you can bring out, that's kind of a board box or a busy box that other kids can do and stay focused on, so you can have one-on-one attention. For us, we do talkie time at night, and they get, like, you know, I mean, I don't always set a timer. Sometimes we do, but we do talkie time. And I am, you know, forever I'll have a kid that is, I'm talking to one. Here we have 3 kids in our little RV, so they're all right there on top of each other. And I've got one, and I've got, you know, the peanut gallery back here making comments. And I turn around and say, this isn't your time. Do you want undivided time when I'm with you? Then you need to respect that it's not your time right now. I'm focused in on Clara, and it's just Clara and me talking. So Ellie and Juliet, you can sit up there quietly and wait your turn. And I'm stressing that because I want them to understand, yeah, it's great to have that one-on-one time. And I can't do it for every single kid at the same time. So there is such beauty in learning patience and respect for others to allow them what they crave so much. So I hope that helps. Thank you guys for sitting with me through all of this. I hope you got some insights. You can listen to the podcast, which I will air later today as soon as I've actually got it all up and edited for today. I will have this Facebook Live and the podcast and some other insights and stuff in a blog post for this week. And I will also, I'll be covering this again next week in the podcast. And then as far as next week's Facebook Live, we are going to be diving into all the different types of schooling that there are. When we go into functional education, I believe that it covers for everyone. And we are going to talk about everything from public school to radical unschooling and all of the different titles in between to help you kind of navigate if there is a label that fits you that you want to dive in more and you can look at resources for, or if you just like being a lifelong learner and keeping it as general as that. So that's our focus for next week. You can post comments, and I hope to see you then. And thank you guys so much for being with me and for commenting. Remember, the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.